It takes about 20 minutes to travel that 1/3 of a mile. The Atlas V rocket there, what a great shot. Standing 172 feet tall, or about 52 meters, and it weighs about 979,000 pounds or 444,000 kilograms fully fueled. That's a heavy rocket. Fast forward to today, and you can see there from the live shot, in preparation for launch, both stages of the Atlas V rocket were fueled up with propellant, and that happened just a few hours ago. And as you can see from some of our views provided from our launch cameras, it is a beautiful day out. We've got a low cloud deck in the area, some clouds that have developed. We'll talk to our weather officer about that in just a bit.
And earlier today, another important pre-launch milestone was completed. Boeing's ground crews inside the White Room closed the hatch to the Starliner. Although there's no crew flying on this second test flight, the Boeing closeout crew is working as if there is. Now let's check in with Launch Weather Officer Brian Sizik with the 45th Space Wing.
Yeah, Brian, we've got some clouds that moved in over the area. Earlier today, the clouds were not there. We had clear skies, and it was looking good. But then we started to see some cloud cover, and I can see in the background there that you're tracking that.
Yes, Dale, you're right. And actually, those high clouds that moved in, you're seeing that filtered sunshine behind you right now. Those actually really help for our launch conditions today. And let me explain that a little bit. So we have this high upper level cloud deck, cirrostratus clouds that are moving into the area. And that actually limited the amount of surface heating that we got throughout the day. And that's how the atmosphere heats up. It's almost like a boilerplate from the bottom. So the surface heats, and that helps bubble up some of those showers and thunderstorms that we see so often here in Florida in the summertime. But as I mentioned, those clouds really help to limit that heating. So we saw a lot less shower and thunderstorm coverage than we would have otherwise seen throughout today. And if you look a little bit farther south, you can see where there was less of those upper level clouds, we actually had more of those showers and thunderstorms developing. So really overall, that is what's leading to some very good launch conditions today. My colleague Will Ulrich just briefed at the T-1 hour weather brief that the probability of go is now 90%. So let's take a look at that launch forecast. A 90% chance of go. The current weather status is go, and a 90% chance that we remain go throughout the count and into T0. So overall conditions are looking really good. All the weather rules we look at are both for natural and trigger lighting, and everything is looking good as we head closer to T0. Guys?
All right, that's a great update, Brian. And we'll check in with you a little bit later for that L-30 briefing by Will Ulrich to the launch team. There's a distant shot of a launch pad, Slick 41 as they call it. We are L-48 minutes and counting. Just a few miles away from us is our team of launch commentators at United Launch Alliance's Atlas Spaceflight Operations Center, or ASOC. They are listening in to the launch operations. We're talking about Dylan Rice, launch director himself for United Launch Alliance. In fact, recently oversaw the GOES-T launch. Well done. And Boeing's Lauren Seabrook, the newest member of Boeing's broadcast team. Welcome to you both.
Hey, thank you so much, Daryl. Dylan and I are coming to you from the heart of ULA's operations, where we are really just tucked in the middle of everything going on. We are surrounded on all sides by the men and women, the engineers who are prepping the rocket. And actually, if we take a look behind us, you can see us up here kind of above all the action that's happening down below, and you can see what's happening on the sides here as well, just to give you a better perspective on where we're able to listen to the flight loops. So Dylan, why don't you give us an update on how things are going with the rocket?
Well, Lauren, Atlas V and Centaur are fueled and ready to go. The vehicle was rolled out to the pad yesterday, where it was connected to the propellant storage farms, air conditioning, all the other pad utilities. Daryl talked about that just a minute ago. The countdown started this morning about 7:30. We powered up the rocket, began our final checks of all of our avionics systems, and then started final preparations out at Launch Complex 41. All that work wrapped up around noon, and with Complex 41 and the launch vehicle ready, we started cryogenic tanking just before 1 p.m. Cryogenic tanking takes under 2 hours to complete and went very, very smoothly today. For now, the vehicle remains in stable topping, and all of our pre-launch checks are basically complete. The team is active closing out the crew access tower as we speak. Once all that work is wrapped up, the team will clear the pad. This is the 93rd flight of the safe and reliable Atlas V launch vehicle, the second flight of the N-22 configuration. the 103rd launch from Slick 41 and ULA's 150th launch overall. This vehicle is equipped with a dual-engine Centaur, a configuration that is uniquely capable of providing all the performance required for Starliner's mission.
So let's take a look at some video that we recorded just about an hour ago from our White Room. This is when our pad team was wrapping up pre-launch procedures. Like I said, it wrapped up about an hour ago, but some of the things you'll see on your screen have been happening throughout the afternoon. They've been doing things like making sure the switches inside the spacecraft were all in the proper position. They removed ground support equipment that was no longer needed for Starliner, and they've ensured that all the air ducts were not blocked. They also armed the launch abort system switch inside the spacecraft. That's actually something the crew will do in the future, but because of course we have no crew on board today, the pad team took care of that for us. They also checked to see if the gravity indicator was secure. I can tell you, I can confirm the gravity indicator is tethered to seat number 2. And before the hatch closure, they purged the cabin to make sure that the humidity was at the right level. Once the hatch was closed, they checked for leaks by pressurizing it. And they basically do this by pushing air into the cabin and holding that pressure for about 10 minutes. It's kind of like inflating a balloon. If you think about if you were, pushing air into the balloon and holding it, if there were any holes in that balloon, you would notice it would start to leak, and that would be very obvious. Well, the telemetry that feeds back to us can let us know if there are any leaks, and that way we know that we are safe to fly. And so once they checked the integrity of the hatch seal, they released that air and then they normalized the pressure. And everything so far has gone really smoothly. The entire pad team is actually called the Blue Team. It's made up of 5 people from Boeing and 3 people from ULA. And Dylan, they really work together, but they have a lot of different responsibilities. What are some of the things the ULA pad team members do?
Well, the ULA team members are there to really manage the crew access tower system. So they're performing safety checks to the tower and configuring the White Room prior to the team leaving the pad. Part of that configuration of the White Room will be retracting the Starliner access plank and raising the White Room environmental seal for launch. Once all that work is done, the Blue Team will clear the pad and head for the fallback area for launch.
And we also watched a really special moment of the team coming together right at the end of finishing their closeout procedures. They were arm in arm, kind of had their heads bowed, had a final moment there with the spacecraft before they left. So it was a really special moment, and I'm sure it was special for them as well. So Daryl and Dee, we'll go back to you.
Thank you very much, Lauren. And it'll be good to see that pad team helping the astronauts get aboard that spacecraft here soon. And now, after the Atlas V launches with Starliner aboard, there are several moments to look for. Take a look.
Ascent begins at T-0, liftoff, the end of the countdown, and the beginning of the mission. Shortly afterwards, at T+12 seconds, the rocket rolls, lining up Starliner with its target orbit and putting the astronauts in a heads-up position. Then, around T+40 seconds, max Q starts. That's also known as max aerodynamic pressure. This is a critical time when the atmospheric forces reach their highest. Next, at about +1 minute 35 seconds, the 2 solid rocket boosters run out of fuel and burn out, and about a minute later they separate from the booster. The Atlas booster engine continues to burn for almost 2 more minutes. Then at approximately +4:30, booster engine cutoff, or BECO. About 5 seconds later, the booster separates, and so does the ascent cover on top of Starliner. At around 4 minutes 45 seconds, the Centaur upper stage ignites, continuing the push to orbital speeds. Then a little after 5 minutes, Starliner is free of the atmosphere and doesn't need additional aerodynamic support, and the aeroskirt is jettisoned. After a long 6+ minute push from Centaur, main engine cutoff, or MECO, happens around 12 minutes after liftoff. Then, when Centaur successfully separates almost 15 minutes after launch, ULA's job is done. But Starliner is not quite in orbit yet. After a 16-minute coast, Starliner ignites 4 of its orbital maneuvering and attitude control, or OMAC engines, for the orbital insertion burn, and then 31 minutes after liftoff, The ascent profile is complete.
Controlling Starliner's flight to the International Space Station are the teams at Mission Control in Houston.
Let's check in with the launch commentators we will hear immediately after liftoff. NASA's Brandy Dean and Boeing's Josh Barrett are joining us from the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas.
Thanks so much, Daryl and Dee, and welcome to Mission Control Houston. Have a good evening. Josh and I have been listening in on the team's preparations all day now. They are controlled today by a team who's been here since about 1 p.m. Central Time, listening in and making sure everything is set for today's launch. They're led today by Flight Director Mike Lammers, a longtime flight director. He's assisted by Flight Director Rick Hempfling, who is helping him keep an eye on the weather and any constraints it may pose to us, particularly downrange at abort sites. And then as an added bonus, we also have Matthew Jominick sitting alongside the two as today's Capcom. You won't hear him speaking to the spacecraft today, but he's building up experience for Starliner's next flight when we'll have crew on board to talk to.
And that's right. Now, as some of you have been following this mission are aware that Rosie the Rocketeer, our anthropometric test device, is sitting in the commander's seat right now in Starliner. Now, she won't be doing any piloting of her own. She'll be getting a lot of help from Starliner's automated flight software, and then hopefully some minimal help from the team here in this control room on the ground if all is going well. But the team has been commanding the vehicle since about L-3 hours, so just over 2 hours ago they've really taken command of the vehicle. Here in the control room behind us, we've got console operators monitoring all their systems. Immediately behind us, we've got our GNC and propulsion subsystem operators. The team really seems to be in good spirits. It's been a relatively clean countdown, and so far it's been pretty quiet, and we're really looking forward to launch.
Yeah, everything looking good as we count down to today's 5:54 p.m. Central launch time, 6:54 Eastern. And that is just about 39 minutes away now. But of course, Starliner will be docking at the International Space Station. So we want to make sure that the space station is ready to host us. That means that just down the hall, we've got the International Space Station flight control team watching over their systems and verifying that they're ready. We're going to toss it down there now to Gary Jordan, who's been watching over with them.
Hey, thank you, Brandy and Josh. Yes, I'm right down the hall here in Mission Control Houston. Behind me, the flight controllers are looking after the orbiting laboratory. That's the destination of the Boeing Starliner, the International Space Station. Teams here are led by Flight Director Anthony Varya. Right now, they're checking out the station systems to get ready for a go for launch and making sure that the station itself is ready to receive Starliner. We'll be watching today's launch closely in this room, but really we'll kick into gear tomorrow when we set up for joint operations with the teams down the hall where Brandy and Josh are controlling the Boeing Starliner. Shortly after launch and throughout tonight, Starliner will execute a series of burns to gradually raise its orbit and catch up with the orbiting lab. We'll also see a series of demonstrations to test Starliner systems and capabilities all along the way until docking, about 24 hours after launch. In the meantime, the Expedition 67 crew is in a sleep period, getting some rest before supporting a docking late at night Greenwich Mean Time tomorrow. But we did hear that the crew requested to watch the launch through the broadcast, so everybody say hi to the crew. From left to right, we have NASA astronaut Bob Hines, European Space Agency astronaut Samantha Cristoforetti. Of Roscosmos, we have Denis Matveyev, Oleg Artemyev, and Sergei Korsakov, and rounding out the crew with NASA astronauts Jessica Watkins and Kjell Lindgren. Lindgren and Hines will be monitoring Starliner's approach and docking tomorrow. After tomorrow's docking, the crew will open up the hatches the following day and formally welcome the Starliner to the station. So again, the International Space Station flight control teams are getting ready to give their go for launch. In the meantime, let's get back to the action with Dee and Megan over at the Kennedy Space Center.
Here to talk about the importance of this day is Kennedy Space Center Director Janet Petro, and she's with NASA's Megan Cruz.
Dee, thank you so much. And yes, this is Janet Petro. Janet, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Megan.
Well, today's flight test is about certifying Boeing's Starliner capsule. Can you talk to us about what that means?
Sure, that's right, Megan. This orbital test flight is going to be launching, of course, from here. It's going to be docking with the International Space Station, then it's going to be undocking, and then it's going to be landing in the Western Hemisphere. And this is an uncrewed test flight. And then this will allow us to be able to certify that vehicle so that we will then be able to put our crew on it for another test flight. And then that'll lead to services with the Boeing Starliner where we can purchase them.
Right. So then once it's certified, then that means we have a second provider. How will that help NASA's commercial crew program grow?
So when we started out this program, we always wanted to have more than one provider. So having a second provider that we can purchase a commercial service from to transport our astronauts to and from the International Space Station gives us a reliability, a redundancy that we really need and we really want within our commercial crew program. And that allows us to do even more research on the International Space Station, allow us to do the technology development that we're going to need as we continue our exploration mission further out into deep space, back to the moon, and then on to Mars.
So it sounds like a second provider is going to mean more launches from here on the Space Coast. How has Kennedy Space Center been handling this ever-growing role as a multi-user spaceport?
So it's interesting. I found a pamphlet in my dad's belongings that showed that as early as the 1970s, Kennedy was known as America's spaceport. And as you know, about 10 years ago, following the retirement of the space shuttle, we embarked on a transformation to a multi-user spaceport. And what you see out here today is a result of that transformation. And so you're absolutely right. We have an awful lot of launches from here. We are a very, very busy spaceport, and we're very, very proud of it. We have over 250 agreements, close to 100, 250 partnerships and 100 separate agreements out here today. And another just interesting fact, one of the first assets or facilities that we didn't need after the space shuttle program that we entered a partnership in is the very one that the Starliner was being built in today. So the C-3PF that the Starliner was manufactured and tested in today that we're going to launch on this test flight started more than 10 years ago with that used to be the Orbiter Processing Facility, or OPF3 as we knew it. So,
yeah, I love when things come full circle. Thank you so much, Janet.
You're welcome. Thank you, Megan.
Back to you guys.
All right. Thank you, Megan and Janet. Great history there on the Boeing facility here at Kennedy. Time now to find out how the countdown to the launch of NASA and Boeing's Orbital Flight Test 2 is going. We're at L-minus 34 minutes and counting. So let's get back to the Atlas Space Flight Operations Center with Lauren and Dylan.
Daryl, from where I'm standing right here, I'm able to actually turn around and see NASA astronaut Sunny Williams, and she's on console working with her colleagues and following along with this countdown. Of course, she's here because we do not have any crew on board today. We are taking a rather heavy load of cargo up with us, about 800 pounds up to the ISS. Rosie the Rocketeer is back, as you heard Josh mention earlier. Of course, she sort of stole the show last time, but what's really amazing is we were able to gain so much information from the sensors that were on her last time that now we've moved those sensors to other parts of the spacecraft and to the other seats in the spacecraft. That way we have a better idea of how other passengers will ride on Starliner. Now, having her in the commander's seat also helps maintain the center of gravity during the mission. And you can see she's wearing the OFT-2 mission patch on the right side of her chest, and of course the classic red bandana with white polka dots. Hers was actually autographed by one of the original Rosie the Riveters, May Cryer. She wrote to her, "To the moon and the stars." Our Rosie named that after that Rosie, of course, and they both embody inspiration, strength, hope, and determination. A famous World War II icon and Boeing factory worker who helped build planes at just 17 years old, Rosie the Riveter recruited scores of women to enter the workforce in record numbers. Today, Boeing continues its rich history of recruiting, supporting, and developing women. I can personally attest to that. And as of last year, women made up more than 24% of Boeing's workforce. Now, let's talk about some of the other cargo going up. They will also be taking NASA cargo with them, food and crew going up for the current expedition crew. And then we will be bringing back about 600 pounds of NASA cargo from the ISS. We will also be taking some commemorative items from many organizations that play a role in Starliner's development, including several American flags, mission patches, and other unique items that will make the trip to orbit. And then later we'll be able to give those back to 14 historically Black colleges and universities throughout the US. So pretty cool for someone to have something tangible to be able to say, this was once in space. Our teams are activating the service module propulsion system right now for launch, sort of like priming your engine, making sure things are ready to go for both nominal and abort situations. Dylan, how are things going with the rocket?
Well, things are going great with the rocket, Lauren. We remain in the final built-in hold as we continue to prepare for liftoff. There are a few activities still ahead of us today. The blue team is now clearing the tower and clearing the pad, and final preparations for launch are underway as we prepare the vehicle's propulsion and hydraulic systems for flight. The avionics team will be taking upper level wind data and loading that into our flight computer that helps Atlas, Centaur, and Starliner kind of steer its way through the winds as we move through the atmosphere. Also, we'll hear very shortly comm checks between the Launch Control Center, Mission Control in Houston, the BMCC at Kennedy Space Center, and then for crewed missions, the astronauts will participate in that comm check as well. Once all that work is done, the crew access arm will be retracted, and then the team will start the final polling for launch.
And as you mentioned, there are a lot of things that our crews throughout both ULA and Boeing are doing today as sort of practice for crewed launch. They don't necessarily have to do it today, but it's a good time to practice for the next flight. So, Daryl and Dee, back over to you.
We'll check back in with you both in just a little bit. Today is Boeing's third test of the Starliner capsule. In November of 2019, Boeing successfully completed a pad abort test, which demonstrated the spacecraft's ability to keep astronauts safe in the unlikely event of an emergency on the pad or during flight. A month later, Starliner launched on the first orbital flight test, or OFT. The spacecraft got into orbit and safely returned from space, but did not get into the proper orbit to rendezvous with the space station. And that leads us to today with OFT-2.
And Starliner's return to the launch pad comes after months of diligent testing and analysis work by the Boeing team. This became necessary when propulsion system valves did not open as designed during pre-launch system checks last year. Here's a closer look at our journey in preparation for today's flight.
Three, two, one, and liftoff. The rise of Starliner and a new era in human spaceflight.
We're right there again, ready to launch and excited for it.
I walk around and see everybody. They have their A game on.
It's taken a village, really, to get to where we are. On our day of launch for the first attempt of OFT-2, we were going through our nominal day of launch procedures, our nominal checkouts, and we found that during our countdown to launch, we had valves that were not functioning properly.
Last year's launch attempt was scrubbed because we could not satisfy some launch commit criteria that were put in place in order for us to have a safe mission.
The team took a really hard look at the data and said, you know, we're not comfortable with flying.
We have to fail to succeed. Failure is just something that, it's going to happen. But as long as you learn.
And that's the reason you want to be an engineer. That's the reason you want to be a technician, is to solve those problems as they come up.
We carefully took a step back. We troubleshot the problem. We got to an understanding of what the failure was. We put mitigation in place, and we've proven that mitigation works. And we've tested the valve several times in preparation for this flight.
So for this flight, we are flying with a brand new service module. We're flying with entirely new valves, and we're also flying with an integrated direct purge system, which is going to keep our valves nice and dry and prevent that corrosion from forming.
So we ended up with a higher quality product in the end, which is fantastic because we've learned a lot from it.
We really took our time to get it right, because ultimately our goal is to fly astronauts safely to and from the International Space Station, and safety is paramount.
people that are very passionate about the work that they do. They understand the importance of every little step that they take, and it contributes to making this vehicle the safest and of the highest quality.
It's huge, really, to have a second crew transportation system. We really want that. That's the goal of the commercial crew program.
Every decision that we make, we definitely have the astronauts' safety in mind.
It's not only the astronauts that are flying it, but it's the people working around the spacecraft. Our goal is to keep everyone safe.
Knowing, again, that our friends are going up there and are going to take this awesome ride to space and come back home, and we're going to be able to deliver them back to their families, safe and sound. It's pretty special. It really is.
I am very emotional about it, yes, because this has just been a passion of mine for a long time.
First launch proved that we could meet two of the objectives. One was getting successfully into orbit, and two was landing the vehicle safely. This mission is all about everything that happens in between.
We're going to launch. It's going to go great. We're going to come back home, and then we're on to the next one.
Go Boeing. That is my last thought. It's 2 words. Just go Boeing.
Here's a live look inside the Boeing Mission Control Center, where the launch team is working and monitoring pre-launch operations along with NASA astronauts.
Yeah, that's right, Dee. There's 2 NASA astronauts on console with this launch team today. They are Commander Barry Butch Wilmore and Mission Specialist Mike Fink. And there they are. They're joining us live from a room immediately next door to the BMCC because we didn't want to pull them too far away from their consoles. Hey, guys, thank you both for taking the time. Butch and Mike, you guys were some of the last people to see and look inside that spacecraft today. Mike, we have a shot of you actually doing some work. Tell us a little bit about what you did and what you saw and how you're feeling.
Yes, Starliner looks great. Myself and our other astronaut, Sonny Williams, who, along with the Boeing team, who stayed up late last night getting the capsule ready. We performed comm checks back and forth to the Mission Control Center in Houston, to the Boeing Mission Control Center here in Florida at KSC. We did it all through the TDRS, which is a tracking and data relay satellite that we use for communication. So everything looked really good. We set up the switches. Rosie doesn't move so much, so we set them up for her, and we made sure the cockpit was ready for launch.
Yeah, and I didn't go because Rosie took my spot.
Well, she is anthropomorphic, not animatronic, right? So
we did give her a high five on the way out.
You did?
We wish her all the best. She's going to get some great data for us too, especially for the launch loads and the landing loads, so that we know that it's going to be great for humans to go fly.
We have a question for Mike Fink now. Why does NASA need 2 commercial crew providers?
We can't keep all of our eggs in one basket. And I think some of the words that we've been saying in the past couple of days is dissimilar redundancy. In other words, we have another way to go up besides the SpaceX and the Crew Dragon, and it's dissimilar. So we're not using the same rocket or the same capsule. So if there's something wrong with one, we can still have a chance to continue our continuous human presence aboard the International Space Station. And it allows NASA to not worry about the launches and landings for space station flights, so we can focus on going to the moon and beyond.
Butch, how does an uncrewed test flight, which is autopilot, as you know, prepare you for your flight test, where you're going to be doing some of the manual flying of Starliner?
Yeah, I tell you, it is uncrewed, and we are very jealous about that, because this is human spaceflight after all, right? But this is a normal progression. This is a test evolution, right? This is experimental developmental space flight test. And as you go through, we're testing on the ground, as you know, all the different various systems. We're in the simulator testing software, hardware. And of course, this is, like I said, the normal progression. So we'll go through the processes to go all the way to launch, rendezvous and dock, undock, fly around, return to Earth, and enter descent and landing and all of that. And we learn an immense amount through all of those processes that are beneficial as we go forward, because like you said, we do have also flight test objectives to certify this spacecraft that we'll be doing when we have the crewed mission, which will be next, hopefully 6 months or 6-ish months or so. So we'll get there eventually, but we have to get this one done first to make sure that we are in line for that crewed mission.
Mike, how does a mission to low Earth orbit help with missions to deep space?
Yes, so I was really lucky. When I came here in 1996, we didn't have a space station yet. And with the International Space Station, we've learned how to live in orbit. We've been able to work on some technologies such as our life support systems and other things, and how to keep humans living in space for long periods of time. And then that'll help us when we go to the moon and Mars and other places, because we know how to live in space, not just visit like we did in the early parts of the program. So it's a natural progression.
All right, very good. And you know what? You guys were both out there at the pad, and we have proof of it. We're going to throw up a picture. There you guys are in front of the rocket. That's a nice shot.
I think, Butch, you're a little taller.
Yeah, a little taller.
Hey, we want to thank you both for being with us. Really appreciate your time. We'll let you get back on console.
Outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Go Starliner.
All right, the 45th Space Wing just wrapped up a weather briefing with the launch team. Let's bring back in Weather Officer Brian Cizik to talk about what was discussed. Brian, Will Ulrich gave that briefing, your fellow launch weather officer. Any updates there?
Yes, he did. Weather continues to look really good. As you mentioned, we just heard that brief from my colleague, Will Ulrich, the lead launch weather officer on this mission, and weather continues to look very favorable as we head closer and closer to T0. So here's a little bit of a different look. Earlier, we looked at satellite. Now let's take a live look at the radar. There's complex 41 and a 10 nautical mile ring around the pad that we're concerned about in terms of weather. And the one feature that you'll notice here, this squiggly line, that's actually the leading edge of the sea breeze pushing in, and that can often be a trigger for showers and thunderstorms in the summertime and late spring, as we're in right now. But notice really nothing going on across central Florida, and that's all thanks to those high upper level cirrus clouds really limiting the stability in the atmosphere. So we remain go for weather, and a 90% probability of remaining go as we head into T0. Guys, back to you.
Fantastic update. Thank you very much. Brian Cizik, launch weather officer with the 45th Space Wing. Now we're getting down to money time.
I know. The launch conductor is also talking to his team, and we want to carry that moment live for you.
Bravo.
So let's go back over to Lauren and Dylan at the Atlas Spaceflight Operations Center.
Yeah, Dee, we are waiting to hear the spacecraft poll
ahead.
as well as the launch
Yes, sir, we
vehicle poll,
verified.
which will be coming up here shortly. But in the meantime, I want to tell you about some of the preps that have been going on with our team over the last month. Our team has been cycling through Starliner's isolation valves every few days since it was fueled up about 20 days ago. And that has continued while the spacecraft has been out at the launch complex. Just a few hours ago, they also cycled through one last time, meaning they made sure each valve opened and closed with no problem. And everything went well, and we are ready to fly. And they also just a few minutes ago were able to open the valves, and those will remain open through launch. So we are good to go on all of that. Our teams have worked as well on the mission elapsed timer since OFT1 to ensure that it operates nominally today and during future flights. And before we came on the air, the spacecraft and launch vehicle were synchronized with the mission elapsed time at L-3 hours. That will be done again during the terminal count, and the flight director will verify it once we get into ascent. Now, again, in just a few minutes, we are expecting the Starliner readiness poll. Let's take a live look now inside the Boeing Mission Control Center. That is where that poll will come from. And it is a very short poll. We will hear the spacecraft launch conductor, Louis Atchison, poll people inside that room in charge of the propulsion system and power and many other subsystems. We will hear 3 calls. One of those calls will come from the Mission Support Room Manager, or the MSR, and that's because after launch, this room actually turns into mission support as things shift over to Houston. So they are there to have their back of their colleagues over in Houston. We will also hear from the spacecraft test conductor during that poll, who monitors our power systems, and the 3rd call will come from the flight director over in Mission Control. So we are expecting that poll to happen here pretty soon. And I think we will stay quiet for just a moment and listen in for that poll.
Flight STC MSR Manager, this is Slick on Launch Ops. This time we'll conduct our CST-100 poll for terminal count. Report readiness to support terminal count when prompted. MSR Manager. MSR is ready. STC.
ECT is ready.
Flight. Let it go. CST-100 is proceeding with final configuration for launch. All operators monitor LCCs and report any LCC violations to your operations leads. SMD, Slick, Launch Ops. SMD. CST-100 is ready for terminal count. The management poll for launch will be conducted on ULA Channel 3 at L-8 minutes. SMD copies.
All right, sounds good. We are good for that. So, Dylan, can you talk to us a little bit more about the Go for Launch poll that we're waiting to hear now?
Sure, Lauren. So once that polling is done, the next big poll is going to be coming up at L-8 minutes is the mission management team poll. That's going to be conducted right next door to us in the Mission Director Center. And that will be ULA Launch Director Lou Mangieri, who's going to collect those from the Spacecraft Mission Director and ULA's Director of Engineering in preparation for providing the final permission to launch to Chief Launch Conductor Doug Lebo at the end of our terminal count status check.
All right, Dylan. Well, we are just about 17 minutes away from launch. We will now toss it over to our colleagues Josh and Brandy in Houston.
Thanks, Lauren. I feel like we've said the word poll a whole lot just now because it is this point in the countdown when a whole lot of polls happen. Actually, Flight Director Mike Lammers pulled his team right before he reported into our spacecraft launch conductor, Louis Atchison, back in the BMCC. I can't help but smiling because we're all go right now. It is very quiet here in Mission Control. From here on out, console operators will be monitoring what's known as their launch commit criteria, or LCCs, and their flight rules. Now, those are very long, very involved documents that basically just list the parameters that the spacecraft and the rocket have to be in to go to flight. That is including both redundant and primary systems. We want everything on Starliner working before we go fly today, and right now everything seems to be working, so we're in a good countdown right now.
That's right. There are just a few more milestones to get through before launch. One coming up in the next minute or so is the switching of Starliner from external to internal power. At that point, the spacecraft will be on battery power from there on out. But for the most part, the team here is just watching, waiting, and standing ready for launch. Now 15 minutes away. We'll send you back to Florida for now, but we will be back with you starting at liftoff, so stay tuned. Daryl?
All right, Brandy and Josh, thank you, and we'll see you then. NASA is relying on Boeing and several other providers to help sustain our permanent presence in space. Joining us now with more on that is NASA's Deputy Administrator and Space Shuttle astronaut, Pam Melroy. She's with me.
Yeah, Daryl, of course. Pam Melroy, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. This is a great day.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you flew on 3 shuttle missions. I'm telling you, like you don't know, all to build the International Space Station. So with that in mind, how does it feel to be here today as NASA works to certify a second provider, meaning more trips, hopefully, to the International Space Station?
Oh, this is a great moment. You know, when we built the space station, we were really focused on all the amazing science that we could do and the innovation. And so now having another way to get there just gives us more resilience. It allows us to do even more science. And I think as a former shuttle astronaut, at a time when there were only 2 human spacecraft that were available in the entire world, and now we have more, and that means more people can go to space. And the innovation that happens at the space station is just so exciting to think about.
Yeah, I love how you light up when you talk about this, because tell me, I mean, it's so important to sustain this permanent presence in space, right?
It's incredibly important. We hope to go out into the solar system with humans to do science and to explore. And those are really long trips. So we really need to understand how to live and operate in space. The International Space Station is providing critical technologies that we are testing to go onto the moon and out to Mars and even beyond.
Right.
But in addition to that, what we've really found is that having a lab allows us to have more innovation.
Yeah.
So the shuttle only flew 5, 6, 7 times a year for about 10 days to 2 weeks at a time. Now we have more payloads, more experiments. We have commercial research going on the station. So that permanent presence allows us to make so much more progress.
Yeah. So as a former astronaut, as a former test pilot before that, you know, can you give us some insight into how our NASA astronauts must be feeling today as they watch this uncrewed test flight?
Well, for test pilots, in God we trust, everyone else brings data. So what you see as a test pilot is the fascination with, okay, how's everything going to work? What we have learned through many years in the aviation side is that the engineers do their best, but there's always things that happen that you don't expect. And so Really, that's what the crew is looking for. They're looking for what worked, what we need to continue to work on. That is actually the meaning of a test flight. So it's, as a tester, it's actually a great moment to see it come together.
Yeah, to get that opportunity.
Yes.
Perfect. Janet, thank you so much. Oh, Janet, Pam, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
Back to you guys.
All right, thank you very much. And we are L minus 12 and a half minutes and counting until liftoff. And you can see behind us, the rocket's on the pad. Atlas V Starliner is ready to go. We just heard that the launch team saying it's a great day, a beautiful day to go fly Starliner.
We are anticipating it.
It is a lot of anticipation out here for this one. And ULA and Boeing are finishing up their preparations for launch. And so we want to give you one other note. Once Starliner launches, the ISS, its destination, will be flying 257 statute miles over the North Atlantic.
Now let's head to the Atlas Spaceflight Operations Center, where Lauren and Dylan will tell us what those teams are doing, and then they will count us down to liftoff.
Hey, D, Starliner is just about ready to switch over to internal power. So we're waiting for that. And then also we are going to start seeing that crew access arm start to retract back. And we will see it move quite slowly today. But Dylan, if it needed to, in case of an emergency, it could really get out of there pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's right, Lauren. And I just heard the command get given to start the crew access arm retraction. But that crew access arm rotates 120 degrees back to the crew access tower. It takes just under 2 minutes to do, but it can be redeployed in about 15 seconds in the event of an emergency. With no crew aboard, we won't see anything like that today.
All right. And we do want to let you know that after liftoff, Dylan will do the flight dynamics from here in the ASOC. Then Brandy and Josh will continue their commentary from Houston through ascent, spacecraft separation, and the orbital insertion burn. We also want to let you know today that we are updating our internal camera system on Starliner to have more live views inside in the future. But for today, we'll be able to watch cameras on the rocket. We will also have live telemetry feeding back that will provide us with a real-time look at a spacecraft model that we will be able to take a look at and know exactly what's happening with the spacecraft when video is not possible as it moves through the dynamic phases of flight. So we are coming up on L-10, getting very close here, and we are now waiting to hear the next call, which will be to verify that Starliner is on internal power. And we were going to listen into the loops for just a few seconds.
L-10 minutes.
L-10
Flight
minutes.
verify CST-100 on internal power.
And Starliner
Verified.
is now on internal power. Today is an instantaneous launch window. You may be sometimes used to seeing that the time of launch can shift a bit, but not for us today. We have a launch window that we have to go right on the dot, and that is because we wait to launch till the orbital path for the ISS aligns up with the Space Coast and with Central Florida. And then once we get up into orbit, Starliner essentially plays a game of catch up with the space station. It just works to catch right up to it and eventually reaches the same speed of more than 17,500 miles an hour.
So Lauren, we should be hearing in just a minute that confirmation that the crew access arm is stowed and latched for launch.
Everything is looking good, and the silence is golden at the moment.
Yeah, we're about 38 seconds now away from the mission management poll that I spoke about earlier. And that will lead up to the terminal count status check coming up here at L-7.
Flight verify ordnance configured for launch. Verified.
And Starliner's ordnance is configured for launch now. That basically means that the devices that initiate our separation events are ready to support both nominal and contingency operations that happen or could happen during the ascent profile.
L-8 minutes.
We are 8 minutes to launch.
All right, and we did hear on one of the other loops that mission manager.
LC arm control. Go ahead. First step 260, crew access arm stowed for launch. Roger.
And that call indicating that the crew access arm is now stowed and latched for launch.
LC switch to ready position. All steps are complete prior to the status check.
So we're going to listen in now to Chief Launch Conductor Doug Lebo poll his team. Coming up in 10 seconds.
L minus 7 minutes. Status check to proceed with terminal count. Atlas systems, propulsion. Go. Hydraulic. Go. Pneumatic. Go. LO2. Go. Water. Go. Sensor systems, propulsion. Go. Pneumatic. Go. LO2. Go. LH2.
Go.
Has gas. Go. Electrical systems, airborne.
Go.
Ground. Go. Facility. Go. RFFTS. Go. Flight control. Go. GCQ. Go. Op support. Go. Com. Go. Umbilical. Go. Arm control. Go. ECS. Go. Redline monitor. Go. Quality. Go. Op safety manager. Go. ULA safety officer.
Go.
Vehicle system engineer. Go. Anomaly chief. Go. Range coordinator. Clear to proceed. Flight director. Houston flight is go. Launch director. You have permission to launch. Proceeding with the count. ALC, verify T0 is set for 22:54:47 Zulu. Verify. Now by the 6 minutes.
And Lauren, you heard it there. It goes all the way across the board. The clocks are set, and we are ready to pick up the count on time for a liftoff here in just under 6 minutes. And Lauren, I'll just tell you that we have executed the status check many times. We've pulled for launches to the sun, the moon, Mars, Jupiter, Pluto, all manners of Earth orbits. Every mission and every countdown is unique and exciting, but the ULA team is absolutely thrilled to put Mighty Atlas back in service of human spaceflight.
And I know that that's something the astronauts have told me, that they feel so confident about eventually riding on top of an Atlas V rocket, because it's been all over the solar system. It's pretty amazing.
It's an amazing machine.
We should be hearing Starliner configured for terminal count here in just a few seconds.
L minus 5 minutes. LC flight. Starliner configured for terminal count. Roger.
There you go. Starliner is now configured for terminal count.
L minus 4 minutes and 45 seconds. All steps are complete prior to terminal count.
And Lauren, with that call, that all of the work is now complete, and the computers are going to take over the automated countdown at T-minus 4 minutes, coming up in here in just about 30 seconds.
L minus 4 minutes and 30 seconds.
Just a beautiful shot there.
On my mark, the time will be T-minus 4 minutes and counting. 3, 2, 1, mark. 3:55. Ground pyros enabled.
Ground system ordnance has been enabled.
.330. Atlas hydraulics at flight pressure.
Atlas's hydraulic steering system has been pressurized for flight.
Three minutes.
3 minutes to launch.
Securing LO2 topping.
Pressurizing Atlas tanks.
Topping of liquid oxygen in the Atlas has now completed, and Atlas propellant tanks are
STS
pressurized
internal.
for flight.
2 minutes.
159.
Vehicle internal.
155.
Launch sequencer start.
150.
Securing Centaur LH2.
Securing Centaur LO2.
Centaur hydrogen and oxygen are now at flight level and topping is being terminated.
140.
Launch enabled.
137.
FTS arm.
$120.
OC is armed.
STS count started. EDS ascent.
EDS armed and ready means the emergency detection system is now armed.
1
and
minute.
that basically just means
Rob,
that
report
if it
range
detects
status.
something, it will
Range
trigger the
green.
launch abort system on Starliner and fire
54.
automatically. The
PLP
spacecraft
started.
would push itself far up and away from the rocket. We're talking a mile up and a mile out in just a matter of seconds. We certainly don't expect to see that today.
40.
Atlas at flight press.
30.
30 seconds.
Centaur at flight press.
Vehicle is now pressurized for flight.
25. Status check.
Go Atlas.
Go Centaur.
Go Starliner.
All systems are go for liftoff.
Go Starliner. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Starliner is headed back to space on the shoulders of Atlas, powered by a workforce dedicated to its success.
We have confirmation of a good MET epic timer on Starliner.
Atlas executed its roll program.
Already ready is now
Engine
throttling down to
attitude,
maintain
crew in a
acceptable
heads-up
dynamic
position
pressure
to
on
get
the
crew
vehicle.
on board today.
This is the first planned throttle down for Atlas in preparation for max Q.
Max Q, maximum dynamic pressure on the vehicle.
Right now, atmospheric forces are the highest Starliner Atlas will face during the uphill climb.
Mach 1, Atlas 5 and Starliner are now supersonic. Vehicle now throttling up.
Up next in about
Engine
20
response
seconds,
is looking good.
Starliner's 2 solid rocket boosters will run out of fuel and burn out.
And we have burnout on both SRBs.
Good crew module forward link connection.
Already ready is throttling back up to full thrust.
Now that we pass the solid rocket booster burnout, you'll soon see those 2 solid rocket boosters separate from the vehicle.
Atlas 5 now weighs just 1/2 of what it did at launch, burning propellant at a rate of 2,800 pounds per second. And we have indication of SRB jettison.
Atlas continues to ascend using solely the RD-180 engine. That's about
2 minutes remaining in the booster
850,000
phase of
pounds of
flight.
thrust at sea level.
Already ready is throttling down slightly as expected. Engine response looks good.
Teams here on the ground confirming Starliner has a good trajectory. We're now 2 minutes and 55 seconds into today's flight, flying at an altitude of 56 kilometers.
Our next throttle down will be to control acceleration forces, limit forces on the crew to below 4 Gs. That is safe for an extended period of time.
One minute remaining in this burn. 1 minute to BECO. Archimedes now throttling to maintain 3.5 G acceleration on the vehicle.
Starliner flying off the East Coast at this point at altitude of 80 kilometers now, moving at a rate of 1,187 miles per hour.
It's just passing North Carolina and Virginia off the northeastern seaboard. For those of you watching along the coastline, you might be able to see this launch.
And we have BECO, booster engine cutoff. We have successful staging, pre-start on the RL-10s. We have ignition on both RL-10s. Centaur is now gone to closed loop steering.
Just passed through several milestones. Teams here on the ground reporting that all are looking good. Ascent cover jettison there that provided that
And we have
aerodynamic
air
structure
jettison.
to the top of Starliner, protected the docking equipment during ascent.
And now that Starliner and Centaur are free of the atmosphere, well into the vacuum of space, that aeroskirt has been jettisoned.
Now 6 minutes into today's launch, Starliner continuing to accelerate up the North American coast. Everything going smoothly so far. Starliner and Centaur have been ticking through their ascent milestones right on track, including the booster stage separation, Centaur ignition, and aeroskirt jettison. Number of status calls we'll be listening for in the next several minutes, but if all continues to go well, the next major milestone to watch out for is the main engine cutoff, when Starliner will be officially in space.
We heard a report from ULA's team. We had a little bit of an overperformance on the booster, but that's a good thing. Centaur is more than capable of adjusting on the fly in its closed loop performance.
Centaur pressures are stable. Centaur looks good.
Flight control teams are also monitoring the performance of the sublimator on Starliner right now. The sublimator is what is used to control cabin temperatures going up to space and coming home. Normally we use the radiators on the service module, but those are not powered up until we get into orbit. We heard confirmation that St. John's abort zone is open. We pre-select these splashdown zones in the case of any needed aborts. The first one would be off the coast of St. John's, Nova Scotia. We just heard the flight dynamics officer report everything is pretty good.
Flight controllers here in Mission Control confirming that our main engine cutoff time is looking stable. It is going to be 11 minutes and 50 seconds into the flight. We are now 8 minutes and 50 seconds in, so that's still about 3 minutes to go until we hit that milestone.
Now, one of the next calls that we will hear is that the Shannon abort zone will be open. Now, you can see on your screens that Starliner is making its way up the North American coast, just starting to go into the Atlantic Ocean, northern Atlantic Ocean. We pre-plan our flight trajectories, so we would not abort a crew into the middle of the ocean. They'd be near enough to land for quick and speedy recovery. So we're still in that St. John's abort zone. Expect to hear that Shannon open call coming.
And we just heard that call. Shannon now open, so Starliner could potentially make that abort landing off the coast of Ireland now if needed, but so far no reason to think it will be. Starliner currently 153 kilometers above the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, and that's about 95 miles.
$60 seconds to MECO.
We are 11 minutes into today's flight. Centaur and Starliner are passing Mach 23, Mach 23.3 and counting. Altitude of just under 150 kilometers.
MECO's main engine cutoff when both of the dual engine Centaur RL-10s are scheduled to shut down. That again is coming up at 11 minutes and 50 seconds, about